The morning sun streamed through the stained glass windows of St. Mary's Cathedral, casting rainbow patterns across the polished marble floors as I adjusted my daughter Sophia's christening gown. At 6 months old she was perfect, dark hair, bright eyes, and a smile that could melt the coldest heart. Today was supposed to be about celebrating her entrance into our faith community, but I could already feel the familiar tension building as my extended family filed into the pews. "Isabella, darling." My Aunt Carmen's voice carried across the sanctuary, dripping with false sweetness. "So good of you to choose such a prestigious venue for little Sophia's christening." I smoothed Sophia's white silk gown and smiled politely. "Thank you for coming, Aunt Carmen." Carmen surveyed the cathedral with obvious approval. The soaring Gothic arches, the hand-carved altar, the magnificent pipe organ that had been imported from Germany. St. Mary's was the most beautiful church in the city, and everyone knew it came with a waiting list and substantial donation requirements. "I have to admit," Carmen continued, "I was surprised when you said you'd managed to book St. Mary's. Father Rodriguez is very selective about christenings here." Behind her, my cousins Maria and Elena nodded knowingly. They'd both had their children christened at smaller parishes, claiming the intimate atmosphere was more meaningful. The truth was, none of them could afford St. Mary's donation requirements. "Isabella must have connections," Elena said, bouncing her 2-year-old son on her hip. "Maybe through Sophia's father's family?" I kept my expression neutral. Sophia's father hadn't been part of our lives since I'd told him I was pregnant. My family knew this, but they preferred to speculate about mysterious benefactors rather than give me credit for anything. "Or maybe," Maria added with a smirk, "someone took pity on the poor single mother." The familiar shame washed over me. Even on my daughter's christening day, I was the family charity case in their eyes, the one who'd gotten pregnant without marriage, who worked multiple jobs to make ends meet, who lived in a small apartment instead of the suburban houses my cousins had acquired through strategic marriages. "Isabella." My mother's voice interrupted the speculation as she hurried over, carrying an armload of flowers. "These are beautiful, Mija. Where did you get them?" I'd arranged for white roses and baby's breath, simple but elegant arrangements that complemented the cathedral's natural beauty. "I ordered them from the florist." "Which florist?" Carmen demanded. "These look expensive." "Rivera's on 5th Street. Carmen's eyebrows shot up. "Rivera's?" "Isabella, those arrangements must have cost." "They're lovely," I interrupted gently. "That's what matters." Father Rodriguez appeared at my elbow, his kind face beaming with genuine warmth. "Isabella, everything looks perfect. Are you ready to begin?" "Yes, Father. Thank you for accommodating our family." "The pleasure is entirely mine," he said, his eyes twinkling. "Sophia is blessed to have such a devoted mother." Carmen stepped forward, inserting herself into the conversation. "Father Rodriguez, we're so grateful you made room for our family in your schedule. St. Mary's is such a prestigious parish." Father Rodriguez smiled diplomatically. "All children are welcome in God's house, Mrs. Carmen Valdez. I'm Isabella's aunt." She puffed up with self-importance. "I've been a member of St. Catherine's for 23 years. My husband serves on the parish council." "How wonderful. Community involvement is so important." Carmen preened under his attention. "We believe in supporting our church. Substantial tithing, volunteer work, leadership roles. That's what real faith looks like." I saw Father Rodriguez's smile tighten slightly, but he remained gracious. "Well," Carmen continued, "I should find my seat. Thank you again for making this possible for Isabella. I know accommodations like this aren't usually made for families in her situation." "Families in her situation?" Father Rodriguez's tone grew cooler. "You know," Carmen lowered her voice conspiratorially, "single mothers, limited means. It's charitable of you to be so inclusive." The temperature in the sanctuary seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Mrs. Valdez," Father Rodriguez said carefully, "all families are welcome at St. Mary's, regardless of their circumstances." Carmen nodded approvingly. "Of course. Though I imagine the donation requirements help maintain standards." I felt my cheeks burning with embarrassment. Even here in this sacred space on my daughter's special day, Carmen couldn't resist reminding everyone of my perceived inadequacies. Other family members had gathered nearby, My uncle Roberto, my cousins, their spouses and children. They formed a semicircle around us, listening to every word. Tia Carmen, I said quietly, perhaps we should take our seats. In a moment, dear. Carmen was just getting started. Father Rodriguez, I wanted to ask, how does the church typically handle christenings for families who can't meet the usual donation guidelines? Do you have special programs for the less fortunate? My mother looked mortified. Carmen, please. What? I'm just curious about the church's charitable outreach. Isabella's done remarkably well arranging all this. Carmen gestured at the flowers, the cathedral, the gathered family. Though I imagine she had help. What kind of help? Father Rodriguez asked, his voice gaining an edge. Financial assistance. Sponsorship. Someone must have helped cover the costs because frankly on Isabella's salary. Carmen trailed off with a meaningful look. The silence that followed was deafening. Mrs. Valdez, Father Rodriguez said slowly, I think there may be some misunderstanding. You don't belong here, Carmen hissed suddenly, turning to face me directly. This is for respectable families. Families who can afford proper ceremonies, proper donations, proper lives for their children. The words hit like physical blows. Around us, my family shifted uncomfortably, but no one defended me. You're embarrassing our family, Carmen continued, her voice low but vicious. Parading around in a cathedral you can't afford, pretending you belong with decent people. Sophia started to fuss in my arms, sensing the tension. I held her closer, my heart breaking that her christening day was being poisoned by such cruelty. I'm sorry, I whispered to Father Rodriguez. I didn't mean for. Don't apologize, he said firmly, his eyes flashing with anger. Mrs. Valdez, I think you need to reconsider your words. I'm speaking the truth, Carmen declared. Isabella needs to accept her place in life instead of reaching beyond her means. Father Rodriguez looked around at my assembled family members, none of whom had spoken up to defend me. His expression was one of profound disappointment. Perhaps, he said loudly, his voice carrying across the sanctuary, before we begin the christening ceremony, I should make an announcement. The entire cathedral fell silent. I want to ensure everyone understands the significance of this day, and the generosity that has made this celebration possible. Carmen straightened, clearly expecting praise for her realistic assessment of the situation. Before we begin, Father Rodriguez announced, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling, let's thank Ms. Martinez for donating this beautiful church. The silence that followed was absolute. Carmen's prayer book slipped from her fingers and hit the marble floor with a sharp crack that echoed through the cathedral. 3 years ago, Father Rodriguez continued, when St. Mary's Cathedral was facing demolition due to structural damage and the archdiocese's financial constraints, Isabella Martinez stepped forward with a $28 million donation to not only save the building but completely restore it to its original glory. Every person in the sanctuary turned to stare at me. Carmen's mouth was hanging open. The stained glass windows you see were restored under Isabella's direction. The pipe organ was rebuilt with her funding. The marble floors, the carved altar, the Gothic arches, all preserved because of her generous heart. Sophia had stopped fussing and was looking around with wide, curious eyes, as if sensing something important was happening. Isabella didn't just donate money, Father Rodriguez continued. She donated her time, her expertise, and her vision. She worked with architects and craftsmen to ensure every detail honored the cathedral's heritage while making it accessible for future generations. He gestured toward the beautiful space surrounding us. She insisted on one condition, that her donation remain anonymous. She wanted no recognition, no naming rights, no public acknowledgement. She simply wanted to preserve this sacred space for our community. Carmen was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Mrs. Valdez, Father Rodriguez said, his voice carrying a note of steel, when you asked about our policies for families with limited means, you were standing in a cathedral that exists because of Isabella's generosity. When you questioned whether she belongs here, you were questioning whether the woman who saved this church belongs in the building she rescued. The silence was deafening. I'm sharing this now, Father Rodriguez continued, because I will not allow anyone to suggest that this remarkable woman and her beautiful daughter don't belong in God's house, especially not in the house that Isabella saved. Roberto was the first to find his voice. Isabella, you donated $28 million? I nodded quietly, still holding Sophia close. But, how? Maria stammered. You work at that nonprofit, you live in the small apartment. I work at Martinez Foundation, I corrected gently. My nonprofit. We focus on historic preservation and community development. Carmen finally closed her mouth, but her eyes remained wide with shock. The small apartment, I continued, is actually a penthouse I designed myself. I prefer minimalist living, but it's in the building I own downtown. Elena shifted her son to her other hip, looking confused. You own a building? I own several buildings. Real estate development has been very good to me. Father Rodriguez smiled warmly. Isabella has also funded the restoration of 4 other historic churches in our diocese, along with 3 community centers and the new Children's Hospital wing. Children's Hospital wing? My mother whispered. The pediatric cancer ward, I explained. It was important to me that sick children have a beautiful, healing environment. Carmen was shaking her head in disbelief. This is impossible. Isabella, you can't have. Where would you get $28 million? I finished. From Martinez Development Corporation. We specialize in sustainable historic preservation projects. I started the company 8 years ago with money I inherited from Abuela Rosa. The mention of my grandmother's name caused several family members to shift uncomfortably. Abuela Rosa had been the family matriarch, beloved by everyone, except she'd always favored me over her other grandchildren, much to their resentment. Abuela left you money? Carmen's voice cracked. She left me her entire estate. $2.4 million. I used it as seed capital to start my company. $2.4 million? Roberto looked stunned. We never knew. Because I asked the lawyers to keep it private. I didn't want family drama over inheritance. Carmen sat down heavily in the nearest pew. Isabella, how much are you worth now? I looked around at my family members. These people who'd spent years treating me like a charity case, who just moments ago told me I didn't belong in my own cathedral. Currently, about $95 million. The number hung in the air like incense. 95 million, Elena repeated faintly. Give or take. The real estate market fluctuates. Father Rodriguez cleared his throat gently. Perhaps we should proceed with the christening ceremony? Sophia's been very patient. As if on cue, Sophia gurgled happily and reached toward the beautiful stained glass windows, her tiny fingers grasping at the colored light. Yes, I said, smiling down at my daughter. Let's welcome Sophia into our faith community. The ceremony proceeded beautifully. Father Rodriguez spoke about love, acceptance, and the importance of welcoming all children into God's family. He blessed Sophia with water from the font I'd had restored, carved from Italian marble by the same craftsman who'd worked on the Sistine Chapel. During the service, I noticed my family members glancing at me with new eyes. The same cathedral they'd admired for its prestige was suddenly more impressive knowing I'd saved it. The same flowers they'd questioned were now evidence of my generosity rather than my presumption. After the ceremony, as guests gathered for the reception in the cathedral's restored fellowship hall, Carmen approached me with obvious reluctance. Isabella, she began, I owe you an apology. You do. She winced at my directness. What I said was unforgivable. I had no right to judge you or suggest you didn't belong here. No, you didn't. I don't understand why you didn't tell us. Why let us think you were struggling? I considered the question while Sophia slept peacefully in my arms, surrounded by the cathedral her existence had helped save. Because I wanted to know if you'd love me regardless of my bank account. I wanted to know if you'd support me as a person, not just as a success story. Carmen's face flushed with shame. We failed that test. Spectacularly. How can I make this right? Start by treating me like family instead of charity. Accept that my choices might be different from yours but equally valid. And never again suggest that my daughter doesn't belong somewhere. Carmen nodded, tears in her eyes. I can do that. Other family members approached throughout the reception, offering awkward apologies and asking hesitant questions about my work. I answered honestly but kept the focus on Sophia and the celebration of her christening. As the afternoon wound down, Father Rodriguez pulled me aside. Isabella, I want to thank you again for everything you've done for St. Mary's. Thank you for defending me today. I should have stopped Mrs. Valdez sooner. No one should speak to you that way, especially not in your own cathedral. I smiled. It's not my cathedral, Father. It belongs to the community. That's what makes you remarkable. Most donors would want their name on everything. I don't need my name on buildings. I need buildings to serve their purpose. Sophia stirred in my arms, opening her eyes and looking around the beautiful space with wonder. She's going to grow up knowing this place, Father Rodriguez said softly. Her children might be christened here too. I hope so. That's why I saved it, for future generations. As we prepared to leave, my mother helped me gather Sophia's things. Mija, she said quietly, I'm proud of you. Not because you're wealthy but because you're generous. Because you use your blessings to help others. Thank you, Mama. And I'm sorry we didn't defend you today. We should have stood up to Carmen. You can stand up for me next time. She nodded firmly. There won't be a next time. I'll make sure of it. 3 months later, Carmen called to invite Sophia and me to her grandson's first birthday party. It's nothing fancy, she said quickly. Just family and close friends at the community center. We'd love to come. Isabella, the community center has a new playground. Brand new equipment, very safe and beautiful. I smiled, knowing where this was going. The dedication plaque says it was donated by the Martinez Foundation. Yes. Did you donate that playground? The Martinez Foundation believes every child deserves safe, beautiful places to play. Carmen was quiet for a moment. Thank you. For the playground, for the church, for being a better person than I deserve. Carmen, we're family. Family takes care of family. Even when family doesn't deserve it. Especially then. Sophia's first word was church. She said it while we were visiting St. Mary's for Sunday Mass, pointing at the stained glass windows with delight. I'd been bringing her every week, wanting her to grow up in this beautiful space that had become ours through faith, generosity, and the simple act of belonging somewhere. When Carmen heard about Sophia's first word, she cried. She knows she belongs there, Carmen said. In her church. She belongs everywhere, I corrected gently. And she'll grow up knowing that. Because that's what I'd learned from saving St. Mary's Cathedral. That belonging isn't about what you can afford or what others think you deserve. Belonging is about love, faith, and the courage to stand up for what matters, even when the people who should support you choose cruelty instead. Sophia would grow up in a cathedral her mother had saved, surrounded by family who'd learned to love without conditions. And she would never ever doubt that she belonged exactly where she was.